Hi everyone, can everyone hear me? Apologies, I think I'm having some technical difficulties. Is the sound working for everyone now? Beautiful. Thank you so much. Excellent. Bear me 1 second, just trying to make sure you can all see my screen. Just a few technical difficulties this morning, but we should be getting started shortly. Can everyone see the slides that are coming up there? No slides. Sorry about this. Everyone will be on mute. Don't worry. I can see a few people asking that at the moment. Everyone was joined on mute. Sorry for the delays. You can see a slide with an orange header. Is that right? Beautiful. Okay. And has that changed for everyone now? Let's just make sure that it's gone to the right one. Excellent, excellent. Mission side, beautiful. Oh, such a lovely chat. Everyone's being so helpful. Thank you so much for that. Sorry, a little bit of a broken introduction there. We had some issues with some of the audio as I was logging in there, but I think we've got everyone on track now. So my name's Kerry Payne. I'm the National Operations Manager here at Back2Work, and thank you so much for joining me today. Very pleased to have so many people online with us and linking in for this webinar series. So I think we've actually got around 200 people that are actually joining us across today's webinar, Lunch and Learn. And what we're really focusing on today is around building rapport and goal setting when we're utilizing telephone and video call. So as most of you have already found, we have a chat function. So thank you very much for utilizing that well and helping me out with some of those little technical difficulties first thing. And I encourage you to continue using that chat function throughout to communicate with each other as you go. I'll try and keep glancing at that and seeing if there's any questions that are raised. There is also, though, a separate Q&A function. That one comes through privately to me. That's in a different section. So if you see me looking across, I'm just checking that one intermittently as well. And I will try and get to everyone's questions if they're raised throughout today's webinar. I am mindful, though, that we do only have about 30 minutes available to us. So if there are anything else that you would like to review, you have any of the questions or queries, you'll all have access to my contact information afterwards as well. And a recording of this webinar will also be available. So let's just get started. There we are. So as I said today, our session is around building rapport and goal setting over video and telephone call. So really the conversation that I want us to start having is around what is rapport? Why is good rapport important in employment services, and particularly in the current circumstances that we find ourselves in with COVID-19? How can we build rapport over the telephone and video call utilizing that technology at the moment? And how do we then start to introduce goal setting with our job seekers when we're interacting with them in something that's not our usual face-to-face setting? So those are the main things that we're going to be reviewing and going through today. So I really feel like the importance of this topic at the moment is very relevant because of COVID-19 and how we are starting to utilize technology in our day-to-day workings. We're not connecting with people in the same way. It's becoming quite different, and we don't have the same usual visual cues that we would have available to us when we have face-to-face meetings. They normally guide our interactions. People's body language helps support us to build relationships and understand people a little bit better. And when that's all removed, if say we're just on the telephone or we're only seeing a small portion, as you are all today, only seeing sort of shoulders and head, what are some of the other things we can do to continue to build relationships with our job seekers and other people that we're interacting with over the phone or through video call? So for example, you'll probably see me doing it today. I make a lot of hand gestures. I also nod quite a bit. That's something that I would generally do as subtle cues when I'm working with people face to face, just to sort of show them that I'm following their train of thought, that I'm, following through on their speech. But if I'm just over the phone, or you're only seeing a portion of me, that could be quite pointless at times, that they're not able to actually see that. I think I found myself on the phone before, someone saying, do you understand? I'm going, They can't see me doing that nod of agreement. So I guess it's what else can we do in replacement of that when we don't have those visual cues? A little bit of delay there, but there we go. So what is rapport? As it should say on your screens right now, rapport is not about making best friends with the caller. It's all about building that environment that makes people feel comfortable, makes them feel comfortable to share, to be honest. And in those settings, then good rapport allows us to get the most out of those interactions. So it is a little bit about that mutual understanding. And it is about stepping into other people's shoes, and taking on their perspective as well, so that we're not just running with our narrative and our agenda. And in doing that, we can build a better relationship with the people that we're working with. So good rapport can create that solid foundation that when we're working with our job seekers means that they feel like they're better understood, but also allows them to listen to you and to take on your advice as well, and to work collaboratively with them, which is what we're really trying to encourage here in this space. It helps us to provide a more tailored customer service approach, and hopefully often leads to the job seeker feeling they can be much more honest with you in that space. And what I want everyone to consider at the moment is we're in a unique situation, and we are able to take each of the opportunities we have when we're interacting with people over the phone or through video link, able to build that rapport and strengthen relationships with our job seekers. And ultimately, this is going to save time for us. It's going to preserve energy, and it's going to reduce stress because we're going to be having successful conversations and interactions and limit some of the back and forth between us. So how can we build rapport over the phone? Now, this is going to sound quite simple, quite obvious, but really it is about listening. And it's about that really core concept of active listening. And that's what I really want to have a chat first of all with you today. So active listening is when you're able to demonstrate that you fully understood someone in that conversation. And normally we would do that with visual cues. As I spoke about before, normally we would do that with such things as a head nodding or maintaining eye contact as we're talking to people. But when we have some of those things removed, what are some of the other things we can do with our language to still demonstrate that we're actively listening and engaging in that conversation? So there's some things that I have up here in the PowerPoint. So a few of those are around encouragement. So encouraging prompts can be something that are really key, particularly if someone is explaining something to you in quite in depth, or going through something in particular, and there isn't necessarily the opportunity for you to demonstrate your understanding by relaying that back to them, or for some of the other points that we'll go into around paraphrasing and summarizing, but you want to still let them know that you're still on the phone, you're still listening, and you're still here for them. So some of those encouraging prompts can be around that, yes, right, yes, okay. That encouragement to to have them continue to talk to you. And that will always ensure as well that you're never left with them asking at the end, are you still there? Are you still on the line? It's those little things that we do in amongst, rather than just sitting there silently, which may, for the person who is talking, may cause them to think, are they still there? Am I being heard? Have I said something wrong? If they're not getting that responsiveness from you. As we move on, there's some other points there are around paraphrasing, and that's really demonstrating the main points and relaying that back to the individual to show that you've heard them. And you can say that in the sentence of, I hear you say X, Y, and Z. Similarly, summarizing is taking maybe the bulk of that information and relaying the main points or themes of the conversation, just to really make sure you've understood that. That's going to help them build rapport with, that's going to help you build rapport, with that job seeker by demonstrating that you've heard them, you've heard exactly what they've said, or that you're just clarifying that language if there's been any miscommunication there as well. One thing I would like to raise in this though is be careful with paraphrasing and summarizing and how we're utilizing that language. Sometimes we need to make sure that we're using that exact language to let that person know that we have really understood them. I'm going to give you an example of this, because altering language or summarizing or paraphrasing in our own mind can sometimes lead people to think they've been misunderstood, that you've not really listened to them, or that you're putting your own spin onto things. So an example of that would be if, say, someone was saying to me, I'm having a horrible day. It's terrible. It's been really bad. I'm just not coping well at the moment. If I was to paraphrase that back and say, oh, I'm here, things aren't just very good for you at the moment, taking away from them that it's been a horrible, terrible day, it may just make them feel like I'm not really being heard here, or you're not really understanding me, or maybe you don't want to hear this at the moment, so it's not encouraging that ongoing, honest communication between the two of you. So just be really careful with that. Sometimes as well, swear words. Some of our job seekers or people we're interacting may use swear words. If you are comfortable in that setting to relay that back, sometimes that can be beneficial, but I would just be cautious in using that. But be mindful of that if someone is using particular language, as best we can, let's relay that to them, because that alteration can sometimes make them feel like they're less heard or understood. How are some other ways that we can build rapport though? Sorry, I can just see in the chat here that someone's just saying, so what would you say about a horrible day? Well, I suppose in this segment at the moment, we're just looking about how we maintain and build rapport with people. So if we're wanting to get onto the specifics about how we may manage that if someone is having a horrible day or having a terrible time, that would be a different topic, and we will cover some of that in the series as we go through. But I guess what we're really trying to emphasize is, in the language of actually relaying back to someone, okay, you're having a really horrible day, you're saying it's been terrible at the moment. Using that exact language just in itself will make them feel like they've been heard and understood, and that you're not putting a spin on things by just simply saying back to them, oh, so things are a bit tough at the moment, are they? Or things are a bit bad, or, you would never want to take away what some person may think horrible means, maybe quite an exact emotion or feeling or situation. If you were changing that quite rapidly to something like, oh, it's just not very good, they may go, no, you've completely misunderstood me, it's horrible. So I guess just really being with them in that moment, taking note of the language they are using. And if you are going to use tools such as paraphrasing and summarizing, I would just really encourage that you actually say that back to them. I hope that answered your question, Dena, and apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. As I said, I'll try and follow the chat as we go along, but I'll get back onto the topic. Perfect, thank you. So this next slide is around how we continue to show interest. So in showing interest, what we're wanting to do is maintain that conversation, build on that rapport, and showing them that we're engaging with them. Normally we would do this with things like our body language, by being able to lean in closer or maintain that eye contact. We get on a little bit later about mirroring and matching as well, but really showing that interest, how can we achieve that through our language? So simply put, we want to ask the right questions. And in this sense, the best questions to keep in mind are those open-ended questions. This is going to allow you to explore these things with them in more detail, gain more information from the person, and consider when you're asking these questions, what are the who, what, where, whens, whys of the scenario. And we've got some examples of that hopefully up on your screen now that you'll be able to see. So how long has this been an issue for you? How often does this happen? In making that open-ended, which allows them to give you more information, what that then opens up to is to be able to expand on that. Using closed-ended questions that only require a yes or a no response isn't going to build that insight, isn't going to move the conversation forward, and it may mean that they're put into a position where they're just encouraged to stop talking, basically. You know, have you felt this way today? Yes. Okay, there's no real, that example of a question, have you felt this way today, only allows them really to respond in a couple of ways, doesn't allow them to speak freely, and building the rapport is all about allowing that open communication to flow. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone there. We can give some more examples, and as I said, you'll have access to this recording at the end if you wanted to recap on anything or all the slides. So the next point we're going to move on to is around conveying empathy. So this is how we show that we're really putting ourselves in their shoes, and that we're understanding the position that they're in and what they're describing to us. And everyone wants to feel heard and understood. So in saying this, how do we convey that though when we're not able to use our facial expressions? Many of us are so well versed in demonstrating that you know, someone is, you know, worried or concerned with a simple look or a glance or something like that. When that's then removed, we need to consider, I guess, how can we convey that same level of empathy when we're not able to give them a simple look in response to demonstrate we understand what they're experiencing. One way around this, again, is around how we utilize our questioning and our languages, and as well as our active listening skills. So again, coming back to those paraphrasing and summarizing. So there's some examples of that up on your screen now that you'll be able to see. So it's saying things around that you hear what they're saying, or if you're not sure, really exploring that with them. I'm not sure I fully understand this at the moment. Can you tell me a bit more about that? And then you could relay back to them maybe and summarize or paraphrase that, just to really show that you understand, you know, where they're sitting at the moment. Another way that you can convey empathy, which we'll review a little bit later, is in and around your voice and your tone and things like that. But we'll get onto that in a few more slides. I'm just noticing we've got some hands up that are coming through. I just want to check that there's no issues there. No, that seems like that's all fine there. Perfect. We will continue on. Using affirmations. So this is around the positive language that we're using when we're speaking with people and how that can help us to continue to build rapport with them. So positive language is around framing things in a different light and potentially redirecting conversations when perhaps they are becoming more negative or repetitive. This can be particularly powerful for some job seekers who may get stuck in their own stories or their own narratives and may find it difficult to see past this. Sorry, I just seen another question come through around, will a copy of this presentation be emailed out? There will be a link that will give you access to the material after, as all of this is being recorded. So sorry, back to the topic of affirmations. So sometimes affirmations, though, can really just leave people feeling like they are better supported. As I said, people do generally like to hear positive and hope-building statements. And we've got some examples of that up on the screen as well. So if we are acknowledging that someone, you know, I appreciate how honest you've been with me today, or you did communicate that really well, even if the story was quite difficult, even if it was quite negative or repetitive, there's even the opportunity there, though, to still bring a positive light into that by saying things around how much you enjoyed the conversation, how much you appreciate them being so open and honest and sharing those things with you. There are other ways you can do that as well. Below, you'll see that there's another example around you have some great skills and a great attitude, and this is our chance for you to demonstrate this, or this is your chance, sorry, for you to demonstrate this. So it just brings it back into that positive, positive light. Matching and mirroring. This is something that we touched on briefly before that I said we'd expand on. So matching and mirroring, some people are really familiar with this when we talk about body language. So people can become quite comfortable with mirroring positions to give the impression that we're in sync with people, that we're on their same wavelength. This can be, you know, with a simple crossing of the same leg or leaning in the same direction, and those types of things, or hand gestures. So with that, it becomes quite difficult though, as I said, if you've only got a portion of either a video call or a screen that you can work with, or you're purely over the phone. There are still ways though that you can start to match and mirror that then gives that same perception that you're in tune with someone. So as it says there, thankfully half of the way we communicate with people isn't actually in the way we move or actually even the content of what we say. It's actually about everything else in between. Mirroring someone's happiness and joy can increase that positive experience that they're having. And mirroring when someone's maybe a little bit more concerned or worried can demonstrate that empathy that we spoke about earlier for their experience. And we'll go into how that's achieved in the next slide. However, as we run through that, I do want people to be mindful that matching and mirroring, we should do it with caution. For example, if someone is, becoming quite angry or annoyed, it might not be appropriate to match the manner in which they're communicating, as that may just escalate things further. Or it may not just be helpful for how the interaction is going to progress. What you're wanting to probably do in those situations is manage that yourself, so that you're not just escalating it. So just be mindful of that as we go through. There are times and places for matching and mirroring, but definitely some benefits to it to build rapport with people. So here are the key points that I've pulled out when I'm thinking about ways to match and mirror over the phone. I'm talking about that specifically as well as over video call, knowing that we're limited in sort of that body language matching we can do in person. So there's some things on here around considerations of your tempo, and that's the speed in which we're talking. So if they're talking quite fast, quite quick, or quite slowly, you know, can we match that to be in sync with, I guess, their the natural speed of their conversation, and so they don't feel like it's rushed or pushed through, or that sometimes people perceive if you're speaking quite slowly that it's disinterested and things like that. So matching that speed can be really helpful. In terms of pitch, obviously people will have different ranges in their pitch, but having that concept of whether you are quite high or low and moving up and down so it's more suited to the conversation, particularly if there's a bit of a tone in what's being discussed. Timbre as well is around those qualities. Is it quite playful? Is it a very serious conversation? Or are we quite excited? Is there something happening and we really want to demonstrate that in the way that we're talking? Projection as well, and around the forcefulness of our voice, or are we being quite softly spoken? Again, that can depend on, I guess, perhaps the content and what's going to be appropriate, but we can do some matching there as well with what the other person is communicating to us. Breathing. Now, breathing can be quite important because that can actually set the tone or the speed and tempo of which we're speaking, as well as the forcefulness of our speech. So we want to make sure we've got a really nice breathing pattern and putting that in line with the other person. And also that can be around our rhythm and the way that we talk as well, which is the next point there. The last point on the screen is emphasis. And that's around mirroring words, particular words that maybe are being more drawn out, or maybe I said with more force. So it's what are the words that are really emphasized, and sometimes taking note of that as well can be quite helpful when we're interacting with people on the phone to know what is it they're actually really wanting to tell me here, what's been said with more force and more emphasis than the other things that maybe they were discussing. A further point we have consideration is around our voice control, and there are some just points on the screen there to consider when we're setting ourselves up to talk to people on the phone or to communicate through video call. So we want to make sure we're putting ourselves in the best position to have strong communication in those forums. We want to make sure we're clear and concise, because that's going to portray confidence, and that's going to assist you in controlling that conversation, particularly because you probably have an agenda or something that you're wanting to work through. And it's hard to have a really set agenda and build rapport if it just appears that you're trying to tick things off your list. So these are some other ways that you can have that real strong communication and be clear and concise, so that we're having that confidence to get from it what we need, I suppose, as well. Just some points here around posture. Obviously, sitting up straight does mean that we can have more conviction and confidence in our voice. We have that ability to, as it says there, speak from our chest rather than it being quite high and nasal. Smiling as well, you hear it in your tone. I know it seems like a little bit of an old-fashioned saying, but it does come across more friendly, more warm, and although they might not be able to see the smile, they can definitely hear it. They can hear it in your voice. One thing that I always struggle with is eliminating fillers. You'll probably, if you watch this back, or you'll take note of it now as we're going through this presentation, but the ums, the ers, the ahs, as I just did, So really that's around portraying a level of uncertainty. Sometimes it can come across that we're maybe unsure of the points we're wanting to run through, or it's just not having that clear, concise agenda and confidence in what we're saying. Instead, try using some of those other tools in our active listening that we went through before around paraphrasing and summarizing. If you find yourself a little lost for words, you're struggling a bit to think of where to go to next, paraphrasing and summarizing can be a great tool to give yourself a moment. It's still building rapport with the other person, because you're asking them a question or you're giving them an opportunity to explain something further. And that in itself can sometimes give you time to decide, okay, where am I going with this next? What's my next point of action? Speaking slowly. So it says here 20% slower. Some studies have shown that people can increase the speed of their speech when they're nervous or unsure. Sometimes it can just be pressured because we've got a lot of other things on. So some key tips as well around, make sure you have the time set aside. You know what you want to discuss, and you've also discussed with the other person the expectations of the call of around how long is it going to take? Are they in a position where they can talk openly or freely? With you knowing that information, hopefully that should reduce nerves if there are some, but also being mindful of that and talking slower, managing the conversation will hopefully give you a much more natural and clearer presentation when you're going through that information. And using the job seeker's name. So it says here around 3 times in a call. Obviously depends on the length of the call, but definitely utilizing someone's name demonstrates, one, you know it, always a great start, but actually that you are actively engaged with them, and it's a great way to make them feel more heard and to get their full attention. Something about hearing your name and bringing them back into that conversation can be really helpful. So just some additional considerations there for when we are setting up those meetings. Have that clear agenda, know what you want to go through, but also be prepared in the timeframes and what you're expecting of people, and make sure they're aware of that as well. So we've got some additional points here for around enhancing rapport. We've got some things around, positive attitude. I know we mentioned before, you can hear that smile. You might not be able to see it, but you can definitely hear it. So try to have that positivity throughout as well. So try not to get defensive or make excuses. And if an apology is appropriate, that can sometimes be helpful as well, but just remaining professional, polite and respectful, which I'm sure are all things that you're already doing anyway. As it says here, leading the call. So again, that's around what is it that you're trying to achieve in that. There may be some specific information you're needing in the interactions you're having over the phone or video call with your job seekers at the moment. and that may cause some hesitation to them. It's a different environment. You know, why are you asking me these things? I'm at home at the moment. I don't quite understand. If they are hesitant though, just explain what you need and why you need that information and what you're trying to gain from this. But be confident enough to lead that call and know what it is that you're wanting to achieve. Allow time for open discussions. I have made a little bit of a point here though to remind myself to run through this as well. Sometimes there can need to be some guidelines around that. So yes, it's great for building rapport to have that, that open space that everyone feels comfortable to share and to go through and speak honestly about, you know, what's happening for them and explore that with them. We have all had that person though who can derail a conversation within seconds. And so we need to make sure that, you know, you're not spending the next 20 minutes trying to get back on track. So sometimes, as we said, setting that agenda and even discussing that with the person beforehand can be quite helpful. So for example, there's a couple of things I really need to run through with you today. I'm particularly interested around your job search for last week, and I just need to make sure we have that all in the system up to date. Do you mind if we set aside the first 10 minutes just for me to get that information, but then we've got an extra 5 minutes at the end just so we can have a general catch up and see if there's anything else we need to go through. In setting that at the start, there's a clear reason why we're calling and what we're needing to explore. You're allowing them to be open and honest about those topics that you're needing to, but you're also permitting that time at the end as well if there are other things that you need to discuss. So yes, we want it to be an open discussion, but I do appreciate sometimes there are just things you need to know and information you need to gather. The next point that we have here as well is around if you are having particular issues with people. I know it's not up on your screen, it's just a note to myself. If there are particular issues that you are experiencing, you know, have those discussions with your manager. Is there anything else that can be provided or support? If you're lucky enough to still have a Back2Work team member on site in and amongst this COVID situation, they are also a resource that maybe you're going to discuss particular situations. Or particular people that you're trying to communicate more effectively with and still continue to build rapport with. We do have a number of obviously training programs that we can run through, but do appreciate that sometimes these can be quite general points and you may need that individualized support for particular job seekers. But hopefully some of these tips you will at least be able to apply more generally as some ground rules around how we build rapport over the phone or through video call. Perfect. So the final bit that we wanted to move on to after we've looked at all of those really, I guess, key ground rules, as we said, around building rapport, those active listening skills, how we continue to show interest, build empathy into our language and our communications, how we can do matching and mirroring when we can't do that with body language. Now that we've reviewed all of that and we know how to build rapport, what are we going to do with it? So how can we make the most out of our phone calls? So as we said, it allows us to talk more openly with people. And so one thing that can come from that is a better understanding, which can make us then be able to set really clear and achievable goals with people and help people move forward, I guess, in their progress towards returning to work in this particular setting. So as it says up on your screen, without goals, people can become, you know, quite demotivated at times, but also they can lack focus and direction. Setting goals can allow people to take more direction, but also it can provide a bit of a benchmark for determining if they are succeeding or how well they're succeeding or being measured against some of those goals that they set. It can also reduce some undesirable procrastination if people are struggling to actually get motivated and get going with some of these things. I really feel personally at the moment this is really important, particularly with some of the mixed messaging that's going out there and being received by some of our job seekers. So as you can probably appreciate, the reductions in Centrelink requirements at the moment, as well as media messaging around the economy, can sometimes make people think that work goals are unattainable, it's just not on my radar at the moment, it's too hard. And really, that's simply not true. There are things we can be doing at the moment, and being really clear with our goal setting now can be so crucial to make sure that people don't miss out on this opportunity to be working towards their long-term goals or taking up the opportunities that are actually there at the moment. We just need to look at things a little bit differently to see what is available. And some of our other lunch and learns and series that we're running will review that more specifically. But I just think having that conversation and ensuring that we're still discussing goals is so important, that we don't miss those opportunities to move forward at the moment. So with that being said, we want to redirect their focus back towards their work goals and help them start to make progress today, not feeling that they have to wait until this unknown time. Let's work towards work now. So research does show that collaboration increases the chances of achieving goals. But to collaborate, we have to engage with them. We have to continue to have these conversations, whether it is over the phone or video, develop that working alliance, and then maintain that rapport so that we're able to track how they're going against their goals and maybe those individual tasks in and amongst that. So there's some ways that we can do that. Just because we may be having these discussions over the phone doesn't mean we still can't use really quick and simple tools to help us develop things like goals or action plans. So there's an acronym that's up on your screens at the moment called our SMART goals. Now, as we said, it's best to set goals with the job seekers, not for them. And this can be a little bit of a tool that you can use to help them individualize each of their goals and make sure you've got a clear plan of action. If you are doing this over the phone or video call, I would recommend that both of you are writing this down, or if the one person isn't in a position to, say the job seeker is not in a position to write this information down, have a way that you can provide it to them after the fact, so that it doesn't just stay with you as you having recorded it. We want to make sure that this information is shared. So SMART goals, what do they mean? So S is for specific. What exactly is it that we're planning on doing? And that's when we want to think about the who, the what's, the when's, the why's, and really summarize that goal and break it down to understand exactly the core parts of it. M is how you're going to measure that. You need to be able to track the progress. And we need to have an understanding of how much or how many, what does that actually look like, so that we're able to see how people are going in meeting their goals. Is it actually attainable? So let's be realistic with these things. Are they both willing and able? Are they capable of attaining and working towards this goal? Setting goals such as losing 5 kilos in 3 months. Yes, that's an achievable goal. Losing 5 kilos in 3 days is very dangerous and is not achievable. So let's just make sure we're really making sure that it is an attainable, achievable goal that we can celebrate with them as they go through those wins towards that goal. R is for resources. Do they have everything they need at the moment? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the support? Or are these things that they can get? So just because they don't have it now doesn't mean that they don't have access to those, all the supports they need to help them to achieve that goal. And then T is just mainly around that time base. Let's set that time, let's set that date in the future of what we're working towards. So that's going to be really important to hold people accountable, to hold people to be motivated. Telling someone, for example, when you were in school, if you were ever asked to write a report, there's no due date, just get it through to me. It may be March, we'll work that out once I receive them. Versus, you have an assignment, it's due on Friday at 12 o'clock. This is what we're going to do. And if you've gone through the specifics of this, you may have even broken that down to smaller milestones up until that deadline. There's different motivators in that. Time setting is really crucial to get people on board, motivated, and to know exactly what they're working to. Not setting a date just puts it, you may be thinking this is something you're working towards within a week, a month, by the end of the year. That may be something completely different if you've not had that explicit discussion with the person. So let's be really clear. What are our timeframes and what we're working for? There's some other tips that we can run through as well for that goal setting. If people are struggling to come up with their own goals or hesitant in that process, maybe giving some choices. Well, it's found that choices can assist people to build clarity into their goals, but it also helps them still feel empowered. So we're not just telling them this is now your goal. What we're doing is we're giving them 2 to 3 options to make sure they're still on track of what we're wanting to explore, but then they get the final say of, no, this is the goal I want to focus on at the moment. Set goals that are going to be motivating or relevant to them or a high priority in their life. And sometimes going through that previous process can give you some indicators as to around whether this is motivating for them. And you can explore that around the, is this attainable? Is this something that I'm able to commit to at the moment? Then you can start to understand if there are other higher priorities in their life that we're needing to review first or prior to working on this goal. As it says there, which we've already reviewed, writing it down can be really important. It's a really valuable process, actually, just physically writing it down. It makes it more tangible, gives the person a little bit more ownership. And when they are writing it down, make sure they're using that positive language or the right type of language around, I will do this. Letting them write things like, oh, I'd like to, or I might, doesn't give it the same, it doesn't hold them the similar accountability as if you're saying, I will do this. And as I said, make sure that you're both writing them down, and then you can reflect on that at a later point. You may also ask them to post their goals in visible places around their home as a bit of an indicator to them of, you know, what is it that I agreed to do as a reminder, and just keeps it at the forefront of their mind as well, which can be really helpful. I'm just mindful of time. I know we're coming up to the end of the session now, so I'm just going to run through. I've got a couple more slides to go, but as I said, you'll have access to these as well through the recording if anyone has had to log off early, so apologies for that. Next thing is just focusing on one goal at a time. So simply press pause on some of the other things that are less important, and that's going to bring the attention to this singular goal that you're working on, and once you start to see progress in that, you can start to explore some of the other goals and things that you're working towards. I've got some different strategies that are up on the board. So implementation intention. This is a strategy to increase the likelihood of someone engaging in the activity or the set goal. So, and it's been shown to be really effective for various different activities such as exercising, recycling, even stopping smoking. And really what we can do is we can help the job seekers to develop a clear plan which will make them stay committed to that goal. So an example of this, it says fill out the sentence, but you may do something like, during the week, I will complete 20 minutes of job search on Friday at 12 o'clock in the library. That may not be relevant at the moment in terms of the library, but you get the gist around setting those really clear parameters around the goal, and then that can increase the likelihood of that behavior being completed if that is a part of the goal that you have set. Habit stacking, that's a little bit of a different one. That's all around creating a specific plan for things that you're already doing and linking it to something that's already built into your day-to-day lives. So an example of that may be something like, after I brush my teeth, I will floss. Or before I eat my dinner, I will say one thing that I'm grateful for that day. Or after I return from my lunch where I watch Kerry in her webinar, I will then go back and send out my email to Claire about the meeting. So it's all about the before, after I will do this, and then I will. So just following that structure through and building it into things that you're already doing, building it into things like lunch, breakfast, traffic lights. Every time I see a red traffic light, and you know, those types of things will help build that habit towards that goal. This is just some other points around working towards those agreed upon tasks. Really, that's just around being specific, time-based, making sure they're achievable. Again, that's just things that we covered under that SMART goal acronym. So the last little piece is as well, once you have created the SMART goal, you have some understanding around some of the activities that people are going to do as the separate tasks to help them achieve that goal. You may just want to have it really laid out clear in an action plan of what you're both working towards. Again, this can be done over the phone. You can have these conversations. You may have even sent this resource out to them prior to run through together. Or it may just be something that you write down at the same time and review at each of your catch-ups. So the SMART goal, as an example of this, I'll run through this action plan. My SMART goal may be to gain full-time work in warehousing. A challenge to this may be that I don't have experience in that and I'm a little bit worried about being a failure. My actions to overcome this challenge are to work in is to begin a warehousing course and remind myself that it's okay to make mistakes along the way as long as I don't give up. I'm going to monitor my progress by my attendance to the course each day, and my support teams are going to be my husband and my employment consultant, and I'm going to discuss my progress with my husband when I get home each night and with my employment consultant on our fortnightly catch-ups via telephone. So that's just a real basic run-through example of what an action plan can look like, but it's just having it there, written down, agreed upon, that then can help you direct, I guess, your job seekers or people that you're working with to stay on track. You can review this, you can adjust. Did the actions that we have in place to overcome the challenges work? Is there anything we need to look at there? And then continue to have it as sort of that working document as you go through. Apologies if that was a little bit rushed at the end there. I was just cautious of the time as we were ticking through, and thank you so much for logging in today and joining for our first lunch and learn. We do have a series of these that we're rolling out at the moment. So this was only session 1. There's 6 weeks worth, each being presented by a different allied health professional that's linked in with the Better Health Generation. And next week's session is on the 19th of May at 12 o'clock, and it's all around job seeker assessments. How do we complete a good job seeker assessment? How do we make sure we're getting the most out of that time with them? Beautiful. Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Hope you all enjoyed today. I'm going to leave the chat open for the last 10 minutes and I'll respond to any that I see there. As I said before, everyone will be sent the recording of today's webinar so that you get access to that information, and really look forward to seeing you in the next one. You'll be sent automatically the invite for that, so I hope all of you can tune in then as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Cheers.